Holy happy hour, Batman. I am Father Ben. I'm an Episcopal priest and co-founder of the All Ports Open Network and Apon Games. I wasn't quite in the camera in the best possible way. There we go. I'm a little better now. Yes, and on this show, Holy Happy Hour, Batman, I am joined by heroes of the gaming and geek world to talk about life, faith, spirituality, game design philosophy, and whatever else comes up. By the way, folks, I am running an air conditioning unit because it is really hot, as you likely know. If it interferes at all with the sound as you're listening to me speak, please do let me know in the chat. I can maybe turn it off for part of our show here until I start boiling. All right, anyway, enough of that. I'm excited about tonight because we have another really great episode, another really exciting guest. Game designer Gabriel Robinson, who has written games like Candlelight and Token, is here. Gabriel Robinson is a game designer and facilitator based in the Tidewater region of Virginia, who has written for Trophy, The Between, Brindlewood Bay, and Sunken, and produced his own games, which you might know, Candlelight and Token, through Glowing Roots Press. His work focuses on themes of horror, wonder, transformation, and empathy. And I'm really excited to talk about all of that and whatever else comes up. I don't know yet. We'll see here on the show. Welcome in the chat. Sky, I see Skyzor there in the chat. Welcome. We're glad to have you. So we're always, speaking of the chat, we're always welcome to see your questions. So, feel free to throw them in the chat during the show, and we will do our best to get to them tonight during the program. Before we get into the episode, we have some really big announcements from Apon Games, and I want to take a moment here to talk about them. So, we recently officially launched Apon Games, the analog game branch of All Ports Open Network. If you go to apongames.com, you can see our beautiful new website. It really is. It looks really good. It looks awesome. My partner, Joshua Wise, he built the website from the ground up, and it looks awesome. You can learn all about all of our games on that beautiful new website. And you can sign up to get updates from Apon Games. And if you sign up to get updates, this is the cool part. If you sign up to get updates, you also will get a 10% off coupon for the new Korai City Jumpstart Guide. That is our brand new cyberpunk-themed system-agnostic campaign setting, New Korai City. It's really cool. It was written by J.W.G. Wise, who wrote The Hard Lessons and the audio drama Weeping Cedars, who GMs for the Worst Days on our other Twitch channel, and tons of other things that he does. So it's a really cool cyberpunk setting. I really think you're going to want to check it out. Like I said, you can get 10% off of buying it on DriveThruRPG if you just sign up to get updates from Apon Games on our website, apongames.com. If you want to check out New Korai City before going all in on it, you can get the free version of the Jumpstart Guide by going to patreon.com/allportsopen. And we're going to be releasing monthly content for NKC through our Patreon model. So that's the first big announcement I wanted to make here tonight on the show. You also may know that the game that I wrote, Broken, a tragic romance game, is crowdfunding right now as we speak. We did fund the full ebook version of the game, and now we're working to fund our stretch goal, which is a set of scenarios written by a really awesome, fabulous group of game designers. I can't wait to see the scenarios that they create, and I think it's going to make the game even better for having them. If you don't know, Broken is an RPG of tragic romance for 2 players. You can check out the campaign right now by going to bit.ly/Broken Game or finding Apon Games on itch.io. There are only 3 rewards left to play a game of Broken with me, the game's creator, and I'd love to play Broken with you. So if you go to bit.ly/Broken Game or apongames.itch.io/Broken, we've got some fun chat going on. I'm going to get to that chat in a second. I would love to play Broken with you. Check out the campaign. Make sure you scroll all the way down there to the bottom to select that $50 reward if you want to play a custom game of Broken with me, the creator, and help us to get to that stretch goal. We are less than $300 away from that stretch goal, so I don't know what you're waiting for. Go check it out. Go check out Broken on itch. Okay, one more important piece of news. I know there's a lot. We're getting to the show here, I promise. Tomorrow night, Tuesday, July 26th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, we are going to be having a special guest game of Broken featuring Elliot Peterson and Alice Kira. They played a game of Broken and they recorded it, and we're going to stream it tomorrow night at twitch.tv/allportsopen. So we have a fun fact in the chat there from Skyzor, who says, fun fact, I'm the biggest Gabriel Robinson fan on the whole internet. So maybe we can talk about that in a minute. That should be fun. All right, it is happy hour. We also had some chat about, I need to switch screens so I can read the whole, so I can go back and see it. But we did have some chat there about the cocktail. So let me just catch up here on the chat. Oh, I'd like to hear what mezcal you're using for your cocktail. You know, that is a great question that I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer because I don't have it here with me and I don't recall. So I'm really sorry about that. If you have a mezcal recommendation, I would love to hear it. So speaking of having a drink, I need some water real quick. All right, so yes, it is happy hour, and so we have our cocktail for the week here on the screen. This is Drinking by Candlelight, which is inspired by the game Candlelight, written by our guest who is on the show tonight. This is a really fun cocktail. I took Gabriel's recommendations to heart. We can talk about that maybe on the show in a minute. And I was like, all right, how do I want to get to? I want to make something smoky and kind of spicy. And so I was like, all right, so maybe a kind of old-fashioned inspired drink with the smokiness coming from mezcal and using some spicy bitters. So there's a bunch of different spicy bitters. There's Serrano bitters out there you can buy. There's habanero bitters. There's ghost pepper bitters. You can kind of use whatever bitters you want, just like kind of be cautious with them and just sort of make it spicy to taste for you. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to combine the mezcal, the agave nectar, and the bitters in a low-ball glass and give it a good stir to combine it well, and then add a large cube or one of those big balls of ice that you can make. And then take a quarter of a lime, just like a little slice of lime, it doesn't have to be a whole quarter, and just kind of give it a good squeeze over top of the glass and the ice and everything, right? Just kind of give it a good squeeze over top. And then take a orange rind, kind of run it along the rim of the glass there, and then use it as garnish. And that's it. That's the drink. That is Drinking by Candlelight, my candlelight-inspired cocktail for this week. As always, if you try the cocktail, make sure you let me know. Tell me how it is. Oh, I've got a really fun little thing for you all. Recently, someone in our All Ports Open Network community, Justin, who's on the Tuesday Night The Worst Days game and is also plays Titan in Delinquent Comics, my Mass Actual Play podcast. He started last week, so it's only been one, but I think we're going to get one for tonight too. He has started making videos of the cocktail recipes and putting them on TikTok. So, and I think they're on YouTube as YouTube Shorts also. So he's Lone Ranger, I think, on TikTok. Maybe if he's in the chat or if he pops in the chat tonight, he can share it with us, because I think he was going to do one for this drink. So yeah, really fun thing you can also check out. Let's see, anything else I can think of? No, let's go ahead and bring our guest on the show. No more just me rambling here by myself. Let's go ahead and do this thing. Welcome, Gabriel, to Holy Happy Hour Batman. How are you? Oh, I think you muted.
Good.
There we go.
No, I'm muted. I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for making the time and for coming on the show. I'm really excited to have you on. And we have your biggest fan on the whole internet in the chat.
Apparently so.
Yeah, so very cool. Very, very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So by the way, the cocktail.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you kind of gave me some hints as to what kind of cocktails you like. What do you think of the recipe?
It's great. I kind of adapted it just because of what I had sitting around.
Yeah.
And I have a
Yeah, it's awesome.
candlelight themed glass, I think.
Ah, it's awesome.
Burial Brewing,
Cool.
these awesome glasses. So
Yeah.
yeah, I like spicy, smoky cocktails. I didn't have spicy bitters, but I
Yeah.
did have other mezcal that I put a dried chili in.
Ah.
Didn't realize that it was super hot and then forgot about it.
Okay.
Became extremely spicy,
Okay.
but tasty.
Okay. Well, so that's probably spicier than if you just use the bitters, but the
Yeah.
you can. I mean, spiciness is one of those things, right, where you kind of make it as spicy as you want it to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also like putting fresh ginger juice in things lately.
Ooh.
So I put some ginger in there, and we had some
Oh, that sounds
sort
really
of
good.
like spices already infused in it. So
Nice. That sounds awesome.
yeah,
Very cool. Well, yeah, I was talking to Justin, who was going to do one of those TikTok videos of the drink, and he also didn't have access to spicy bitters, and so he was going to try to do it with just like a little tiny bit of hot sauce. I was like, all right, that's probably
sure.
will
Yeah.
work, but just like use this very very small amount of hot sauce probably.
Hmm.
Otherwise, because otherwise I don't know how much it would change the flavor. It really depends because there's not that much liquid in this drink, right? Like
Right.
as written in my recipe, you're really only talking about 2 ounces of mezcal and like half an ounce of agave nectar. So like if you add too much hot sauce to that, it's going to change the flavor pretty significantly, pretty quickly.
Yeah, but it's nice to have something that's refreshing, but then is like has heat at the same time. So
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I
yeah,
like stuff like that a lot too. And I only recently got into mezcal. Um, and had some really good cocktails in it that used it to make smokier cocktails. So I've been wanting to do one of my own for a little while. So you gave me you opened the door for me by saying smoky. I was like, yes. Um,
yeah,
because sometimes people smoke cocktails, right? They like burn wood or
mhm,
whatever. And that's really cool. If you can do it. But I think
sure.
that using mezcal is probably like a really easy way to get a smokiness without having to burn some wood. you
Yeah,
know.
for sure.
Yeah.
Funny thing too, someone was asking about recommendations, and I'm still learning too. I only recently discovered that I like mezcal, but there is a very affordable one called Monte Alban,
Okay.
or Alban, at least in the store in town here, and
Yeah.
it comes with a little worm in it. So what I've been doing is I've not felt like eating the worm, but when I've got a new bottle, I've poured the last bit with the worm into the new bottle.
Nice.
Um, so they're making friends. I think I'm up to like 5 worms in the current bottle. So
Uh,
maybe one day they'll just be all worms.
that is both funny and awesome and kind of gross at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, the craziest thing ever would be right if you had like a party and like some people just ate all of the worms at once. Like I don't it makes it that's too gross for me. I think, but it could be quite an experience.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, anyway, speaking of quite an experience, I wanted we're gonna talk about like the intersection of therapeutic RPGs, and that kind of thing. But so I'm just trying to think. I want to let's put a pin on that for a second. But I want to talk just briefly about what you have going on game design wise. So you're the creator of Candlelight, and as we said, Token, and I think Token right now, right, is pre-orders, or can you tell us what's
Yeah.
going on with that game?
Yeah. So Token was part of Zine Quest in 2021. So I'm a ways out from when I plan to fulfill it. I actually just got a print proof back. So I have the nice printed real
Oh,
book. I can show you a
awesome!
little bit later. But yeah, it feels good to actually bring it to life in that way.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And it's still up for pre-orders for a couple more weeks before I lock it down and order the print run and start shipping them out.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's really fabulous. So where can people go to pre-order it?
I need to send you that link.
Sure, sure, sure.
Let me
I
get
could
back to
probably
you.
grab it from.
It is
Oh,
linked on my Twitter bio, actually. My
yeah.
pinned tweet has it. So
That's what I'll do. I'll quick throw that in the chat, and it'll be in the show notes. Um, it'll certainly be in the show notes for this. So if people are watching this later on YouTube, it's in the notes right there. Oh yeah, there's the it's token.backerkit.com, but I will
There we go.
throw that in the chat. And speaking of chat, I want to say hello to Signal Station and to
Hi.
Not Alone Horror in the chat. By the way, you were discussed already tonight. Well, I guess that was off air. We might have discussed Blaine Martin off air already. That's like 2 weeks in a row because last week, last week we had Jason Cordova on and we talked about
Nice.
Blaine on the show, and now Blaine got mentioned again on the show. Blaine, you're getting mentioned a lot on Holy Happy Hour apparently.
And,
What did I do to
Signal
my?
Station is another great collaborator of mine. That's Michael Van Vliet. Has a lot of awesome stuff you should follow as well.
Awesome. Well, there's a
Yeah.
worm party being discussed in the chat, and also thank you, Signal Station, for gifting 5 tier 1 subs. That is really,
Nice.
really, really cool, and just incredibly deeply appreciated. So thank you for doing that. Um, Blaine's such a legend. Oh my gosh, it's true. Blaine is such a legend. Anyway, I was gonna link your thing in the chat, and it was being weird. So give me one moment, folks. I'm trying to do
Sure.
that still. Let's see if I can get
If the
this
link
set.
doesn't work, alternatively, just start wandering through the forest. Eventually you'll run into some looming shape that will come forward and might hand you a copy or give you the. That's what I should have said.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So yeah, okay. So that's what's going on with with the game. But what prompted you coming on the show, which I would have had you on just to talk about Candlelight because I love that game. But we can talk about that. But let's talk about
Yeah.
the intersection of like therapeutic RPGs. How did that become something you were interested in? And tell us about what you do with that.
Yeah. So a couple things. I think I just came across it at some point. I learned about an organization called Game to Grow. That's a nonprofit based in Seattle, Washington, and they are licensed family counselors and therapists, and they use Dungeons and Dragons as a therapeutic modality, for kids and young adults. I never heard of that, and that was around the time I was getting into RPGs. And until recently, I was also working as an occupational therapy assistant. So I'm not a licensed therapist, but it's some sort of adjacent skills, I guess. But developing rapport with someone, having a kind of therapeutic presence, just supporting, having that role. But I just thought that was the coolest thing. And then I discovered a local organization. I live in Norfolk, Virginia, but nearby in Chesapeake, a group called Inside Out Learners, which is where I now run basically simplified D&D for young adults as a social skills kind of group for mostly kids on the autism spectrum, or plenty that aren't, that just want to play. But kind of the basic idea is that anyone can benefit from. I mean, we kind of know this from playing just role-playing games. You're taking perspectives of other people. You're problem solving together. There's all these things going on at the same time, which are just so beneficial. Just personally, it's therapeutic just to connect with people in that way. But that's kind of the idea of it. And so again, I don't run those as a licensed therapist. Back in my mind would love to someday with some more credentials, but for now it's really just getting kids to and it's online, so getting kids often in different states to jump in and play together. Usually kids who have some sort of difficulty with those kind of social skills, taking turns, even just being creative. They get put on the spot a lot to make up parts of the story. A lot of just moving the spotlight and facilitating the game happening.
Yeah.
They're amazing. They come up with the coolest stories. So it always keeps me on my toes, and I have a great time.
Yeah, that's really cool. And when you've done this in the past, what games do you typically run for these types of games?
So it's kind of that whole indie gamer thing where everyone knows D&D and wants to play D&D, and that's what it started as.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm calling it. I've secretly continued to sort of tweak things and try to simplify things because the sessions are about 2 hours online. So I'm doing everything I can to make combat be fast and dramatic, simplify rules, but it's basically a version of 5e with all my story game influences creeping in.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not. It's funny because that question is not meant to be in any way a loaded question, but this is kind of an indie space. But in indie spaces, it's funny how it is a loaded question if the answer is D&D sometimes. But most people I know who do anything like that do any kind of like anything at the intersection of being therapeutic or therapeutic adjacent with RPGs uses D&D. And it's interesting because I haven't really thought about, maybe this is something we could talk about here now.
Yeah.
I haven't really thought about mechanically or from an experience standpoint what type of game rules I think would be conducive to that kind of environment, other than the fact that like people are already familiar with D&D, and a lot of the kids maybe or young adults who want to play in a thing like that, they maybe want to play D&D because it's what they've heard of, that's what they know. I don't know, I'm curious if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll go back to Game to Grow for a second because what's also really cool about them is they do training. So if this is a thing that you're into, especially if anyone is like a therapist or knows a therapist, they do several different educational tracks. And I did the first 2 levels of their like mental health track. Some of it was kind of familiar, just like game facilitation skills. And then some of it was getting into a little bit more like, what are the sort of core capacities you're trying to encourage here? Like things we might not think of, but we do anyway. Just like we're problem solving, we're building frustration tolerance. Like when you're a kid and you wanted your character to do the thing and you failed the role, like it's so frustrating. And if you're having trouble regulating your emotions, for example, it's kind of pushing you just a little bit. It's putting you in this setting where you're challenged, but it's in a safe, supportive environment. You're with peers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess their approach on one level, it's kind of like the system itself. Like they actually do like Minecraft groups, or they do like, I think they might even do like Magic the Gathering. So you could almost use any game, I suppose, because anything can be used as a therapeutic tool. So sort of adjacent things that I kind of picked up on in my therapy adjacent work, as far as like being extremely flexible and in the moment, and you're focused on the needs of the person and what's going on for them, and you're always kind of staying fluid and changing. So if even like basic, say we're just using basic D&D in combat, that could be an example where I might happen to know that one kid in this group has said he just loves big damage numbers. Like he has a blast doing that. So every time he's like, do I have sneak attack? Can I do this? Like, oh yeah, you can. I just kind of encourage that. I'm trying to let him have fun the way he wants, and then maybe add in some other challenges. Or if there's other players who have a lot of trouble kind of jumping in, making choices, you kind of try to give them something to nudge them in that direction a little bit. So it's really using what's in front of you, I guess, is the short answer. So in theory, you could use almost anything, because you're sort of being put into a situation where you're having to process, you're having to like listen to other players, you're having to read facial expressions, you're having to do all these things at once that you're going to benefit from it no matter what. It's just really trying to kind of track how it's going and make the adjustments. And in game skills, we do just like move the spotlight. If someone's getting talked over, he might kind of nudge it back to like, well, let's hear, and you can use the game to do that, which is really fun. You just have an NPC do the thing. If a player is really shy and they happen to do this thing that's really not, if they had their character do something really bold and reckless, you might even not ask them to roll. You might just kind of roll with it and just say like, oh yeah, you succeed so dramatically, and you kind of use your own GM presence to respond to them in a way that meets them and encourages them, I guess.
No, that's really cool. But it's funny because my initial reaction to that was like, oh, that's really clever. Like, that's such a cool way to support somebody in, like, like support and have a positive feedback to what they did. And then I thought, like, I probably do that. I've probably done that with, like, adults that I play with in my peer regular gaming group. I've probably done that same exact kind of thing where somebody just did such an amazing job, whatever, role playing a situation, like, oh, we're not even rolling for that one, you convinced the heck out of them or whatever. That kind of reaction. So it's interesting how so many of the things just kind of naturally come from play, If you do, I
Yeah.
guess if you do play, if you're not a jerk, I guess if
Right.
you're like, or like, just natural to fun play, like,
Mhm.
how to put that, like, um,
Well, it's
yeah.
spontaneous. You know,
Mm-hmm.
again, all these things that a lot of us are just doing and might not
Mm-hmm.
think of it in those terms.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it's still a really cool emerging field. Like
Oh
I've
yeah.
only started to just like look up and read studies, but there are serious studies. There's like not just kids, folks are using this for like veterans,
Mm-hmm.
depression. Again, just on a personal level, I'm sure a lot of people could relate how much just playing games with friends and connecting does for you personally.
Yeah.
Pandemic, just there's all kinds of ways that it's pretty common sense stuff. It's just giving folks that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we
Mm-hmm.
do. So we do a gaming club at our church, and you know, we do board games. We also do RPGs, and it's interesting. I've had conversations because people who don't know RPGs or don't know gaming, like they don't quite understand, right? But I've
Mm-hmm.
had to explain sometimes, or I've chosen to explain sometimes to people that like, because churches, this is gonna sound terrible, but it's just honest. But church leadership, a lot of times, they want to kind of know, like, well, okay, this is a ministry, but is it really a ministry? Like, what do we kind of get out of it? Sometimes they want the dark side of that is they want to know sometimes, well, what does the church get out of doing this? Which is a horrible way of
Mm-hmm.
approaching any
Yeah.
kind of ministry, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I often will explain to people that, like, well, like, even if we don't do, like, there might not be anything explicitly religious to any of this, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still, here's why I still consider it to be a ministry, even when we're not doing anything explicitly religious in it. And it's the reason you were saying it's because like the act of creating these spaces where people can come and play and socialize and engage with other people is itself a gift of ministry. It's like a grace to have that space, even if there's nothing explicitly religious about it, or if the church is not trying to turn these people into members, which we're not, trying to do, or if it never leads to a single conversation about anything that has to do with Christian religion, like it's
Mm-hmm.
still just the act of playing, right? Like just the act of sitting together at the table and having that collaborative play experience itself is just that. To me, it's a. I use the word. I'll use the word grace for it. That's like my theological term, but
Sure.
it's a gift. It's like a gift to have that
Mm.
space. I don't know. So
Yeah, that's interesting that you're playing in that setting because I think it's a thing that I don't know. There's a lot of maybe untapped settings. Just I don't know. More people. I feel like if more people just got to play and experience that kind of fun. I don't know. I just that's my background friend
yeah,
agenda all the time is like I don't know if you've been to this, but I bet you would have fun if we did play. So how do I kind of pique your interest and hook you into playing something? There's like a local writer center in Norfolk called the Muse Writer Center,
mm.
where I am teaching a class there coming up. I'm doing a one
Cool.
page RPG class,
Oh, that's awesome.
kind of like Grant Howitt's one page stuff for all the games on itch. It's a really cool nonprofit writers center. My wife also teaches songwriting there, and like other people we know in the community do a lot of cool writing classes there. But I've been trying to get those writers into this because I know they'd be amazing.
Yeah,
Uh, they're just interesting to find those different venues where maybe people just haven't had a chance to try it, but the connection is super cool. And something I think about a lot is how um, you played games with a group of friends, whether it's a campaign for a long time or maybe you played years ago, but you're creating these shared memories together, which are
yeah,
so cool. And it's like that's the same thing as if you went on a camping trip.
yeah.
You made it all up. You sat for hours and hours and laughed and connected and had all these like created these shared experiences and memories together.
Yeah.
So that's just yeah, it's really unique.
And it's like amazing how real that stuff becomes for you, even though it's not in the sense of like
Mhm.
like when I just know when I like we'll talk about our D&D stories, with like last so just a couple of days ago, my one of my longtime friends who I played with like for years and years and years, since I was in college basically, from my original like gaming group from all the way back. He passed away recently, and
Mm.
so a lot of our stories are around gaming. And I went to his widow's house, and they have kids. They have two kids, and I have three. I took my three kids, and we were sharing all of our like memories, and we were sharing all these like D&D adventure stories, you know what I mean? And like none of that's real stuff in one sense, but it's so real to us and important to us, and it's like our stories in another sense. And just I was just thinking afterward how kind of strange and funny and cool it is that we're like sharing stories about these fictional characters that we played to our children. We're
Hmm.
passing them on like you might share like a
Right.
hunting story with your kids or
Yeah.
something. Like it's really
Yeah. Totally.
fascinating. Yeah, it's just really fascinating to me.
Well, and there's like there's friends that I've made like during the pandemic that I've spent more time with playing online, like by far than friends down the street. It's just worked out that way. And that's just kind of crazy to me to think about sometimes. This whole friendships that got to develop because we spent like a couple dozen hours hanging out together, which just doesn't happen the same way. Um, so yeah, it's unique in that way.
So related to
Yeah.
the therapy stuff, I didn't get to highlight it earlier when we were talking, but I just wanted to pull this story from the chat because I am a T-Rex in the chat shared that their partner is a speech pathologist and has a kid client
Cool.
that he plays D&D with, but all the different characters are various aspects of the kid's emotions and communication skills. And I just wanted to highlight that because that's such a cool
Yeah.
example of using games in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm fascinated. I really do think it's like a niche thing, but it's
Yeah.
gonna keep getting bigger. And again, I'm not like that level of a licensed professional, but those who are doing that, it's I don't know. I think we're going to see a lot of other cool contexts um, emerging for that. And it's just, I think the coolest thing is that it's like pretty effortless as far as you can be a kid and all you need to know is like, we're just going to play this game and you're just playing and having fun. It's not like we're going to do this serious psychotherapy now.
Yeah, right.
You
Yeah.
get all the benefits from it. So yeah. Yeah.
So you do a lot of horror design, obviously. Do you? What are your feelings about sort of using horror genre in relationship to maybe not for, well, I was gonna say maybe not for the kids, but maybe for the kids. I don't know, but just in general. So like kind of the do you what do you think about just that intersection, like using that particular genre of stories and RPGs in a therapeutic way?
Um, so I will, try to approach it pretty lightly. I will, in the same way that we introduce safety tools, often I'm introducing like new players, like who've never played D&D or anything before. So as much as I can in the introduction, I'll mention like we're making up this story. Things might be scary, things might be surprising. Are there, just that kind of basic lines and veils pitch. I don't feel like all the kids necessarily get it, but I will definitely check in. I've usually found that kids like the scary stuff. Kids are totally well. The other day there was a game where I think I'd made up that there was like a blight was spreading. It was affecting this town. All the plants were kind of dead and becoming zombified. And there was like a blighted sunflower that was this zombified flower approaching the group. And then one of the kids said like, oh, I think I pulled up a picture of a sunflower and they were like, what if all the seeds were like teeth and they were rotating? And it's like,
Wow.
that's incredible. That's the kind of thing I would think of. And now of course they are, but like you just made it way clearer than I would have thought. Sometimes I'll kind of catch myself and kind of wonder like, am I putting too many cults into this? Is this too weird? But I mean, I ask them so many world building questions.
Yeah.
And give them a lot of chances to see where they want to go. So I don't know. I think I don't worry too much about it. I try to keep it like PG-13, of course.
Hmm.
I just kind of try to model some safety tools in that way.
Yeah, it's really cool that you mentioned the world building questions. That's such a really cool approach, right? Which is like getting them to get involved in the world building by prompting them with questions and stuff. Like that's like just a
Mhm.
level of investment and involvement, and I can
Mhm.
see like that's so sort of mind opening and world opening, like changing your way of thinking when you're again just like when I started
Mm-hmm.
experiencing RPGs in that way. And so, like, if you are like a kid who maybe has felt like your world has been limited by other people or by your own
Mm-hmm.
like disabilities or whatever it is, to
Mm-hmm.
have that experience, I can imagine that must be so sort of cool to like be able to be involved in that kind of world building in that way.
Yeah. I mean, two things about that. Like, number one, that's just what I love more than anything at this point. I think it's just the writer side that I've gotten deep into, but I just love world building with friends. Like, that's my favorite thing. I don't care too much how many mechanics we get into, but the putting an idea out there and having someone build on it and just egging each other on and just creating more and more strange and wonderful, beautiful, weird things that you wouldn't have thought of by yourself. It's
Yeah.
just the most ever. And I do try to encourage that. Hopefully, again, just modeling some of these things. Not, I am the dungeon master. This is a traditional thing where
Yeah.
it's everything that I say and that's it. Like I'm the facilitator, but I want to know what your ideas are too. And especially some kids that maybe being put on the spot and trying to be creative doesn't come naturally. Maybe I'm dragging out of them a little bit. But what I really, if nothing else, I think the one thing I try to do is just basically jump on any suggestion they make, and like the improv, yes, and
Yeah.
um, enthusiastically encourage whatever they thought of, and like, yep, that's in the world now, and it's here's more, so they get that feedback that like there's no wrong answers. Any creative idea I have can become part of the world, and then see their peers do that too. But just like on my own, that's how I love to play. It's just so much fun.
Yeah. Well, so that kind of, I think, leads me to like one of the questions we typically ask on the show that most designers that come on, we talk about, which is your origins, your TTRPG origin story. How did you start playing games in the first place? How did you get introduced to the hobby?
Yeah, actually, funny thing, talking about games with kids is a mutual friend of me and my wife in town had us play with him and his two kids some years ago, and it was like the D&D starter set. And we've always been into like fantasy and fantasy game stuff in general, so it's just kind of chance that I didn't end up playing sooner. But that was an introduction. From there, pretty quickly wanted to just like know what all the character options were, how this worked, how you run a game, and just kind of started crawling down the rabbit hole. From there, it was from D&D to like Dungeon World. I started looking up Dungeon World stuff, and then found the Gauntlet
Yeah.
through their podcast, and just kind of kept going. Just realized there's a world of these amazing indie games out there.
Yeah.
And from there, got into Trophy. They were doing their sort of community crowdsourcing, so they were putting out some posts for actually Trophy Loom, which invited the community to add little entries of things that were happening in the world. And I think that's what really hooked me on that sort of world building kind of writing and play, of just making lists of rumors and myths and things that may or may not be true, but just story seeds, basically.
Yeah.
I just kind of kept going from there. Zine Quest, I think 2020 was when I did Candlelight, which is a rooted in trophy game. That was my first experience trying to make an original game. And I'm not sure if he's still watching, but my brother-in-law is an incredible graphic designer and collaborator for that. So all the
cool.
design, it's from him.
Nice.
Same with Token.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's really cool. So yeah, there's some good chat going on in the chat there about all this. But in Signal Station said that's probably where we first crossed paths. Miscellany entries on the Gauntlet forum.
Yep.
That's cool. Yeah, so it's really interesting. I'm just curious, kind of stepping back for a second, which is how did you go the step from D&D to Dungeon World PBTA? How did you get introduced? Just out of curiosity, how did you get introduced to Dungeon World? How did it get on your radar, even in the first place? Just out of curiosity.
I don't really remember. I think it was just searching. Probably around the same time, like I saw maybe there were just like articles of like, here are some other, if you like D&D, here's some other games, like hearing about Blades in the Dark.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I don't really remember specifically what it was.
Yeah, I
except
was
that,
just curious because
yeah.
it's really interesting to me. That trajectory you described is.
Yeah.
I think that around that, if it was, as the chat there is indicating, if it was around like 2016, 2017 in that time period, I really do
Hmm.
think that like PBTA really
Hmm.
was. It's not. I feel like it was just really having a moment around that
Hmm.
time. Um, and just like there was, I just more the awareness level of story games in general, PBTA games and Dungeon World was just like kind of at a height during that period of time. I feel like a lot of people got into those games around that time period. Now it could just that's just
Hmm.
me gleaning that from talking to people in things like these interviews or from online. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
I also came out of trying to run, well, not trying, but I did run, my first D&D campaign, and looking at it now, I went from the extreme of like over prep to now I do almost no prep. I will have my vague map of where things might go, and then it's improv really. But writing this extensive Google Doc of like possible things that would be in there, and I think running larger groups, just running into the things that maybe plenty of other people did that were like, this is really clunky, this is hard, is this how it's supposed to go? What are some more streamlined ways to make a game happen and make it fun for everyone? And yeah, somehow from there, stumbling onto things like Dungeon World and other systems.
cool. Well, so what was it like to take the bold step of like writing a game and trying to put Candlelight out there? Was that like what was that experience like?
I mean, it was awesome. I didn't anticipate, I didn't really know what I was getting into as far as how deep it would go, the process of like, I mean, all the logistics around it.
Yeah,
I'm really proud of like how it came out. I mean, and Brian made it look really awesome. Brian made it look amazing, but it was really a good experience for just learning how to reach out and find an artist, how to commission an artist.
yeah,
Um, I think it was helpful to have a partner who's a professional musician and be very aware of like um, people not commissioning you well, not having good manners of like hiring a creative professional. And so I was very conscious of like I want to like make sure whoever I work with, I'm really like paying them well, I'm really communicating clearly and like just doing a good job. I want to do things right. So that was what kind of prompted it was also from the Gauntlet, actually. I think at the time, Jason had put out, he's done it a couple times for Zine Quest, but sort of a small loan for people who wanted to do zines based on Trophy at that time. Um, which more than anything, I think was that little nudge of someone kind of believing in that I would do a good job, just someone believing in your work and
yeah.
giving you that little nudge to try it. But then the more I kind of thought about the idea, it just kind of expanded a little more.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, having somebody like believe in you or believe in the thing you're working on is just so empowering and such a big deal, right?
Mhm.
To take that step of like, because it's so helpful for like taking the step of like putting it out there.
Mhm.
I can say that since I'm funding my game right now. I know
Yeah.
what it
Yeah.
feels
Yeah.
like to have people encourage you to, because it
Yeah.
can be intimidating to put something out there in the world, that you've made or that
Yeah.
you invested in.
Yeah. And I think it was also building off of, again, Michael chimed in the chat about the Gauntlet forums with the Trophy Loom entries. Just, I think all the creativity going on with that was really inspiring to me. There was the Trophy Dart contest.
Yeah.
I think that's also, so both Michael and I were runners up in that contest. And that too was just a huge confidence boost. Like, okay, I had fun making this thing. I really like kind of put my heart into it. Um, but other people thought it was cool too. So like, okay, no one's outright I'm not having a negative experience. I feel
Yeah.
very fortunate for that to just have really a good supportive, positive experience from the start. To just give enough confidence to keep trying that kind of thing. Um, and just believe it or not, social media is terrible and Twitter is terrible, but it's actually been pretty cool as far as the people I've met through RPG stuff
Yeah,
and
me
just
too.
that
Same thing.
mutual
Yeah.
enthusiasm. Like it's actually worked out well in that regard. So I really appreciate all the just other amazing creators out there too who've been supportive and just sharing amazing stuff. There's just that inspiration to keep making something weirder. So
I love Candlelight. I actually played. This is a funny thing. I actually played Candlelight before I ever played Trophy,
that's
Dark or
cool.
Gold or anything. I played Candlelight first. It's like, so the story is that Blaine Martin actually ran Candlelight. It was during the pandemic. I don't mean to make that sound like a past tense thing, but it was during the time when like our Saturday Game Club I mentioned was only remote, which was for like, 2 years of only remote, and we were
Hmm.
playing a lot of stuff on Discord, and we played Candlelight on Discord. In fact, Blaine just reminded me of my character. I'm looking back because I was talking about interviewing you tonight, and he reminded me. I played a weird shaman character who used spit and mud to gain second sight. That was like my whole thing. I was like a shaman type, and it was such a cool. Like I really liked that game a lot. The idea like of playing with like the idea of like the afterlife and looking at like that. Like it was just such an interesting experience. And like I said, I was new to, like I was very aware of like what you might kind of with like, do people consider, this is I can't believe, I feel almost embarrassed to ask this live on the show, but do people talk about Trophy as an OSR game? Is it considered OSR? I mean, it's rules light, but do people call it OSR? I don't know if people call it.
I, I don't know. I think there's an intersection there. There
Yeah,
might be some opinion
but
in
I'm just
chat. I
thinking of
think,
like I was pretty new to like rules light games,
yeah.
and I was totally new to Trophy. Obviously, I hadn't even played it yet. And yeah, anyway, I just love Candlelight. Such a great game. I wanted to ask you sort of where the idea for Candlelight came from, and if there's anything in particular that inspired that game.
Well, first, thanks for the kind words, because it's another side of all this is that like you make a thing, but then it's very easy to, number one, you finish making it and you kind of never want to see it again because of how long you've had to be so picky about the details.
Yep, I get it. I
You kind
get
of be
it.
like, all right, next thing, I want to go make something else, but then also it's really easy to put it out there and then, second guess yourself and be like, I don't know if anyone actually read it or played it. So like, just knowing someone played your game, I think maybe other people relate. That's just like the biggest deal. Besides the joy of making it, is like one other person played it and had a good time. That's just still never gets old. Uh, I think the original idea actually was I was kind of playing around with ideas of so there's the game Girl Underground by Jesse Ross and Lauren McMahon. Jesse Ross created Trophy, which was I think the previous Zine Quest, which is basically like an Alice in Wonderland fairy tale kind of game. So I think I'd had this vague idea for a while of making some kind of game about the spirit world or about the original idea was a collective game where all the players are guiding a spirit through
Mm.
some journey. So it kind of started as a hack of that, where the different character playbooks were different, sort of like one was, I think, was like a sentient weapon or artifact. It was sort of like guiding a hero through the afterlife, or failed hero to redemption in some way. So very
Mm.
in that vibe, but it was very different. And I think I probably ran into some walls overthinking it and realized like I could just do Trophy Dark in reverse,
Yeah.
um, and just escape the forest.
Right.
And keep it simple, and that kind of made it a lot easier for me. I think that was also very encouraging that as a designer, and why I've continued to just like play in the rooted in trophy space, is that you're just using D6s. um, I'm not a big mechanics person. I mean, so it lets you just focus on like the tone and the fictional elements and the story you want to tell. But that's kind of where it came from. It was the idea of like exploring the afterlife, the flip side of like some of the fantasy tropes of heroes, like either what happens when you failed, or what happens if you die, what's left. And I don't know, just in the same way that I like horror, I think that's kind of some of the themes that have always spoken to me, is not just there's a scary thing,
Yeah.
but existential, like, well, what does it feel like to contemplate your death, to face what's beyond. and then I don't know, just play in that space and explore it and spend time with more of the emotional tones of it and the meaning of the events. Not so much focusing on, I guess, the heroics or the action part, but sort of what is the impact, and hopefully giving like some other reflection to the character. Maybe encouraging people to, I built that into the game too, where you could take any character you played that has died, maybe a TPK, your whole party died, and then you can play this. But hopefully giving you a way to kind of just explore the interior a little more of a character when you're a ghost, when all of your weapons and your gear and your abilities are taken from you.
Yeah, I think I saw on, it was probably on the, I'm going to assume it was on the description maybe of the game. I forget where I saw it, but I think I saw you put somewhere like encouraging people to use Candlelight like with their like a character that died in a different game or something. Did I read that? Am I right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah.
That's such a cool idea of like encouraging people to like use it in conjunction with their like other games, or like if they have a campaign, using it in conjunction with that. I think that's such a smart idea.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I try to give a variety of ways to play it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm curious if anyone else has done that. There's a solo option in there. So yeah.
Yeah, using it as a solo game for like a character that's died is such a cool idea. I was thinking about that kind of thing because we itch funded, Apon Games itch funded in May our first game we itch funded, which is the Hard Lessons, which is like a one shot game where you have some great master and the master has died or fallen in some way, and you play this former students of the master who are regathered like for one last night to remember the lessons you were taught by the master, share them as stories like toasting, raising a glass and giving toasts, and then deciding the fate of the master's school. And in kind of the campaign, as we're like marketing the game and itch funding the game, I kept talking about it as like a world building tool for like D&D, as like or for your other whatever RPG campaign you want to play. It doesn't, and since this doesn't have to be fantasy, it could really be anything. It could be like your Masks game. It could be your great mentor, your superhero mentor. And so I tried to like market it that way because I think there's a lot of room to use games in conjunction with each other like that. Like, for example, right now with Broken, we've been doing a lot of these mashups. Broken's a breakup game, so we've been mashing it up with other games. Like we played Dating Sim from Possible Worlds Games on Friday, which is a game that recreates like a reality TV show. And so we got characters together in a reality TV show, and then we dropped them into Broken and we broke them up. But like, I feel like there's a lot of really cool stuff that can be done with taking games like Candlelight and matching it up with other games. And I feel like I don't know how to I really want to see people doing that stuff more because I think it's really smart and cool. There's no question. I have this is not turning into a question for you, but like I just don't know how to get people to like have that conversation more, or to kind of like try to see if we can influence that into the hobby a little more. I don't know even what I'm trying to say that I want to do, but I think there's a lot of fertile ground for it is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there doing that. Maybe it just takes kind of like anything, yelling about it on the internet about how much I'm doing it. I will say, if Blaine's still tuned in, we're collaborating on a project where we talked about basically, we played the game Tether. I'm gonna forget the creator's name. I want to say it's Adam Buffoni, I think. Okay. But Tether, it's a 2-player journaling game, which is really cool. Where the concept is you're two characters at different points in time. I think you can decide how far apart they are, but they discover this journal, and it's a horror game. So the terror is approaching this town, and it gives you a series of sort of journal prompts, and you end up writing back and forth to each other. But we played that as a way to world build what's planned to be like a series of games for a podcast.
Nice.
And we're still kind of figuring out what games, and start talking with some other players. But it's sort of Twin Peaks, small town horror inspired. So I think that might be one way to do it, is if you have like a theme of I guess a sort of campaign or whatever project, and then from there experiment with what kind of games could tell the story. It's like we're talked about like flashbacks, different points in time, because the story is sort of about this place and its inhabitants. So you could jump back 100 years. You could play something very dark, fairy tale, fantasy like. You could jump to the modern, present time. I think that would be really cool. And all the world building games, like I haven't played it yet. We've talked about. I'm sorry, did you say Street Magic?
What a great
games
game.
like Year. Yeah, it looks super cool. But you can use. There's just so many great options out there. Like more than ever, you can do games just to build a map.
Yeah.
You could do solo or duet games to establish relationships. I think that might be a fun way if you just look at different points in time, and kind of think of that more loose way, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool. And by the way, it was confirmed in the chat that it is Adam Buffoni is the.
Oh, cool.
Is the,
Be good.
Yeah.
Remember some name.
Street Magic is a great game.
Yeah.
That I mean, people now, of course, sort of because the Adventure Zone did the Quiet Year to world build.
Oh, great.
I think a lot of people became exposed to that idea. So yeah, hopefully, like, it'll be one of those things that trickles down to the hobby more. That like people start like, oh yeah, we can like think of a campaign. We can think of a campaign being thematic and character driven and story driven rather than system driven. And I think that's like a mental switch that if people make that switch, it'll just like open up the possibilities, right? Like crazy.
Yeah. Friends of the Table is also amazing.
Right.
That's actually where I learned about Quiet Year. It was I think it was Mirielda, so they played Quiet Year and then they moved to Blades in the Dark.
Cool.
They're just incredible about their like world building and taking their time. That sort of writer's room kind of approach that like I've kind of picked up from the Gauntlet and Trophy does in story games, where you're very fluidly, you're playing in character, you're playing out of character, you're building the world. But yeah, why you're missing out? Why not?
Yeah.
Jump around in systems.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of benefits like people could. Trying to say this in such a because so often I see a lot of the discourse in indie games being kind of judgmental towards stuff like Dungeons and Dragons, but like the non-judgmental way of saying that, right, is there are a lot of benefits that people might be able to enjoy if they were to like maybe think of campaigns. I mean, I've been gaming like for 20 some years, and this is new and so really it's new to me to think of campaigns that way. So it's not as if like, it's like it took me forever to get to that to get there. So I'm not surprised if other people are just sort of discovering that, finding that. By the way, so Token, I want to talk a little bit more about Token.
Sure.
Not to shift gears too quickly here, but tell us about what's going on about Token as a game and sort of what's going on with that. I know you already told people where they could pre-order, but I mean more from a game perspective, like
Besides buy my game, No, so Token's my second rooted in trophy game. I made it as part of Zine Quest last year. What is time right now? But 2021. Yeah, right. And I got the print proof like the other day. Still sorting out. The binding came through weird, so I'm sorting that out. But that side note. But Token is a duet game, kind of inspired by again, tragic fantasy, folklore, ballads. It's about basically a hero and monster who are seeking each other out in a haunted or dangerous place. They start out with the reason they're seeking each other, but that changes throughout the game as they discover signs left from the other, leaving each other little tokens and clues. And every time they encounter something, they learn more about the other, and that changes their perspective, changes the reason they're seeking the other, and then the game ends when they meet face to face.
Oh my gosh! I just sorry. You can tell that I'm crowdfunding a game because these things constantly are popping in my head. But like I said, we've been doing these mashups of Broken and other games, and I just thought like that would be such a fun horror way of doing like a mashup of my game Broken, which is you play Token, and you
Uh-huh.
play to the moment they meet, and then
Oh,
you play
nice.
Broken and you break them up, and it
Oh,
could be like a because you said the items made me think of it because like in Broken you break items, so it'd be such an easy.
oh yeah,
It
yeah.
would just be a really cool mashup. Sorry, that was just like an aside that popped into my head, which is like, oh, I would love to experience those two games mashed up together. Um,
We should try it. I would be into it. Yeah,
yeah,
that'd be interesting. Yeah, yeah.
that could be really really cool. So with the tokens that you know that they leave for each other, how
Mhm.
does that work mechanically? Is this like just so like a descriptive thing that you're describing? Are you yeah? Someone said you can call it. Oh, it was Skies over there said you can call it broken token. Yeah, that's
Yep.
what I was thinking. It's so perfect.
Yep.
But yeah,
Well, 'cause
so
that's sort of a ballad too, which is part of what I was thinking of going into it. Of that, like, there's all these variations of the song where, um, and you have someone's away at sea and you've left your betrothed this ring and she's never taken it off, and you come back and you prove that it's your real love. Actually, it didn't end up in the final game. I wrote a kind of twist on that, where the sailor comes back and there's this interaction, and then in the meantime she's uh, taken on her true form, and revealed that she's far more glorious and horrifying, and devours him, and just having fun with it.
yeah, it's amazing.
um, but the tokens are very uh, fictional tags, I guess. So there's a lot of tables in this game and suggestions. Um, Mechanically, it's basically the hunt roll from Trophy. So which is very simple, which kind of is sort of the risk roll equivalent you would make if you're doing something dangerous. In this case, it's if you're trying to confront the dangers of the forest or the landscape. And then the reflection roll, which is basically the hunt roll from Trophy. If you're searching the environment, or if you're reflecting on your drive for why you're seeking the other, you might come across a clue.
Mm.
And it's very collaborative and back and forth. It's technically a GM-less game.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about it now, it's kind of like just a 2 GM game, but what's the difference?
Sure.
But when you find something, the other player will tell you what it is you find. So it's sort of what it could be that the dweller, the monster character, has left monstrous footprints that start to show you the nature of their form. Or it could have been that they carved something in a tree to try to communicate with you. It could have been that they left a piece of jewelry from when they used to be human. It's whatever's the most evocative, and very much like Trophy, you're building on the theme and symbolism together. So
Yeah.
it can be whatever. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds really awesome. Well, I will have to see if I can convince my resident trophy GM who's in the chat that maybe we'll play Token. Although it's a two-player game, so I guess we wouldn't play it at our game club. That could be just one. We'll just have to find an opportunity to play it, or
Mhm.
maybe that's one I could play with my spouse. Um, it might be one that she would be into. Well, or we'll organize this broken token game at some point, and we can do that for
Yeah, that's
for something.
interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that could be really
The
interesting.
names are perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really for whatever reason right now I'm on this I'm like obsessed currently with this idea
Mhm.
of TTRPG mashups, of just like mashing up two games, even like mashing up like shorter versions of them. Like that's what we did with
Mhm.
Dating Sim and Broken on Friday night, was we really just shortened both games
Mhm.
and mashed them up together. So yeah, I'm like obsessed right now with this mashup idea. Nobody cares about it probably as much as I do, but for whatever reason right now I'm like really into it. I
That
don't
sounds
know.
really fun.
Yeah, I guess it is. But yeah, yeah. So train of thought here for interview questions. I gotta circle myself back. Um, yeah, so you are also writing some trophy content that's like just for trophy, right? Like I heard you were working on the mega dungeon, or did writing for the mega dungeon. Is that right?
Yeah, so I ended up getting to write for Trophy Dark, Gold, and Loom. So I have incursions
Cool.
in Dark and Gold, and then yeah, actually the Mega Dungeons in Trophy Gold, which is super cool. So I think they got 20 something writers together
That's
to
awesome.
write basically individual rooms of the dungeon. And Trophy Gold, they're called sets, which are sort of like locations. Um, And then I got to write sort of the connective tissue for that, like the streets when you travel through these ruins or when you go up and down. Um, whenever they asked if I'd write something, I jumped on it. So I've been really fortunate, and it's really taught me a lot. I feel like it's been a really good, like, just learn to be a better writer and understand how to fit things together. Yeah, it's super cool. There's so many like amazing writers as a part of that too. So like, if anyone hasn't checked out Trophy Gold in the Mega Dungeon, like you could play that for, I don't know. I think someone, maybe Jason said it was probably like a good at least 100 hours of
Wow.
play if you ran.
That's crazy.
I mean,
That's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
I really like Trophy Gold a lot though. I'm definitely a fan of Trophy Gold. I do really want to play your incursion that you wrote, by the way, the Lantern of Revelation. That incursion
yeah.
sounds so cool to me. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
That was
I'm
from Speak the Sky, which has also amazing Trophy Dark incursions. And so they're on itch.
okay.
They created this typeface called Dicer, which actually was used in Token as well, which is a super useful tool. I'm not in all my time just like learning to write, I've not learned layout, but I know for folks that do that, they've created just like really, really useful tools. I think Dicer has all these like symbols and dice symbols and game symbols you could use in your layout.
Cool.
And that incursion was from a Trophy Dark, a pamphlet jam they did.
Okay.
So there's other a trifold, that's what it was, the trifold jam. So it's meant to fit on like a trifold pamphlet.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, so
Yeah.
that's interesting. So, um, I'm seeing the trifold pamphlet now because if folks go to the Glowing Roots itch page, you can see that on the like screenshot of the page. Yeah, but the theme of like truth and celestial power, it just seems really cool. The forest of crystalline trees, the cinderwood, like just sounds really fun and evocative. Like I definitely want to play
Cool.
this
I
incursion.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Um, but that's just me
Um,
geeking out about stuff that you've written. I want to play. That's
For
not.
sure. Yeah. I will hint
I-
at one thing. It's nothing's been like announced, but I've been dropping pretty obvious hints on my own Twitter. But I'm actually collaborating with Jesse Ross right now on another trophy related game that I'm really, really excited about.
okay.
So stay tuned for
I was
that.
gonna say, can you say anything more than that yet or not? And obviously not
I
gonna.
don't know what he wants me to say or not.
Yeah, fair enough.
It is based on one of the settings in Trophy Loom.
Okay.
Um, so it's an expansion of that basically, and
Cool.
yeah, more to come soon. I just don't want to be the one to break it ahead of its time. But that has just been like an honor. It's just been amazing to again run into folks at the Gauntlet, see all the creativity, jump in. Like I mentioned earlier, be supported, and then now get to collaborate is just like such a blast. So learning a lot from the experience, and just really, really appreciative of like all the folks I've met in the last few years, really from, again, social media can be this hellscape, but I feel really lucky I've managed to run into some like genuinely nice people.
Yeah,
Like, just
that's,
collaborate with them. Yeah.
the chat made me laugh because Signal Station said in the chat, finally, Trophy Golf, the
Trophy.
the play to lose golfing RPG, which I just couldn't. It cracked
All right,
me up.
Michael, give it away. It's a golfing sim, indeed. The ruins of Old Caldor. Get your golfing club, and
That one legit cracked me up. Like you were talking, and I like legit, like I felt bad because I'm like I'm gonna start laughing while you're talking for like just because I read that trophy karaoke. Lose yourself in the glow of the Technicolor too. All right.
you can go make stuff. Yeah. Hey.
Yeah, because I always ask people like, is there anything you're working on now? Is there anything you're designing? Anything down in the pipeline? And so I guess you already kind of answered that.
Yeah.
With this sort of secret project with Trophy Golf, obviously we just announced that you
Yeah.
broke the news here on
Yeah.
the show. But other
Yep,
than
yep.
Trophy Golf, um, is there anything else you're currently working on? Anything you've got kind of in the pipeline otherwise?
I mentioned working with Blaine Martin. We're working
Right.
on a small town horror podcast project. Also talking actually with Jason Cordova about another I'm not trying to sound mysterious. I'm just these are like background things.
That's all right.
We're talking about another game based on Brindlewood Bay actually.
Oh, cool.
Um, which is really exciting too. That's been another really cool system that Brindlewood Bay just had its Kickstarter, did amazing.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting to like move from trophy stuff to writing scenarios in that kind of format. So I'm interested to play with that more as well. Basically, Brindlewood Bay is like a mystery investigative game, or a Carved from Brindlewood games. Use a system where you don't know the solution to the mystery. So you collect clues as you play, and the players make up what they think the solution is. And then based on the clues they found, they kind of roll and see how close they were. So it's really like a really cool innovation.
Yeah.
But as a writer, it's really amazing because you just get to write weird clues and set pieces and scenes, and then you just get to do all the fun part. So I think it makes something that's usually like maybe even a negative play experience, trying to do find the right mystery solution in a game, but makes it into a very fun collaborative one.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is it weird writing like a mystery when you don't know the solution to the mystery even yourself, right? Like as the writer, because of how that mystery system works. Is that a weird way to write?
Yeah, a little bit, but I feel like in a way that's kind of how I've written other incursions. I guess trophy gold incursions, where I've just been trying to focus on like what's thematic, what are all the places that build on the story or the theme here, but I don't really know how it all adds up exactly. So it makes it easy to stay in that space of just like building on a theme and tone. Yeah, it's weird sometimes too, because you will like worry about like, well, does this actually make sense? You're gonna have to think like, could this add up and make sense? But it's not your job. The players get to do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like, that's, as a game designer, right? Like, that's kind of what you always do in some way. Like, right, you're giving people the tools to create a story when you're a game designer. So you're not, like, I always say that everyone besides me, I always feel like has the best ideas. Like, so I'm not the person who's going to be coming up with the amazing story probably, as much as I feel like maybe I can be the facilitator to help other people, give them the tools and create the space for people to tell the stories. That's why I always feel like I do both. That's how I feel like I GM'd for a long time, and that's how I feel like I function as a game designer too.
Yeah, it's very freeing. And I think that's again just back to that like world building part. That's what I love about writing so much, is that you just get to it's play. Like, even if I'm not writing it down, I'm in my head, I'm already playing, having a great time. just imagining stuff. And then I think you see something weird someone shared like recently. It was some oyster festival, I think.
I saw it. Yep.
That was going around. Like,
for people who don't know, it's the mascot of an oyster festival, and it's someone in a giant oyster costume, and it looks like something from an eldritch horror,
just got eyes all over it. It's great. Just weird stuff that you see that inspires you, and you think, or just honestly like bits of history, period, anything historical, nature, just how weird the real world actually is. You see little snippets and you imagine like, what if that weird crustacean was like 100 times that size? That's the most horrifying monster I could think of. Let me write it down.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I just thinking here, this is just kind of not a great segue, but it kind of just popped into my head, because that sometimes I get towards the end of our show and I remember that, we didn't really talk about religion, which is fine. Like, we don't always on this show. But what's weird to me about that is, like, there are so many natural inroads to talking about religion and spirituality based on the games that you write, like Candlelight being about like sort of the afterlife and having to do with death and
Mhm.
things like that. And I was set up to ask to tie it into religion, and I didn't. But
Mhm. Sure, sure.
yeah, is like do you know does your own sort of spirituality or sort of religious views have they influenced the way you do game design at all? Like games like Candlelight, like is that influenced by your own religious experience or thoughts about death and dying and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably on a pretty subconscious level of it.
Sure.
Think so. So I grew up not with like a religious background, I would say a spiritual background. Long story short, both my parents kind of found meditation and yoga, found an Eastern spiritual path. That's how they met. So I kind of grew up with Eastern meditation path. Um, so I was fortunate to not have any sort of dogma in the picture or any like, well, this is what you belong to, as much as like um, I think getting a healthy appreciation for just spirituality and the beautiful sides of that in culture, just respect for different religions and that kind of thing. Um, so I guess that that's always been sort of a part of, I don't know, wanting to explore that wonder, wanting to make games that explore the interior as much, maybe just from having some experience with like meditation early on.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I think it's something I'm interested in continuing to explore. I think weirdly that's kind of what I like about horror, and I'm still finding things that I'm curious to find more things that reflect that. I read an article a while back about like someone called it like transcendent horror
Yeah.
is the angle on it, and just
Interesting.
that yeah, that intersection basically where there's uh, I'm not gonna articulate it super well, but the point of view is sort of like not just being afraid of this horror or of oblivion or of your own death, but like the party that wants to sort of transcend your own self, I guess.
Mm.
Um, which there's a lot of angles you go with that, with spirituality, with religion,
Yeah.
but I think that's what's fascinating to me, and I just I don't know. I'm not bored yet of of basically always asking like, well, what if there was a cult here?
Yeah.
Um, uh, Not just in a creepy like human sacrifice way, although that's
Right.
fun, but I don't know. I guess like what draws me to like horror and those themes too is just like um, that sense of like empathy, that sense of hope, um,
Yeah.
like not just seeing some bad things happen, but relating to in sort of a cathartic way of like what what does the character do when faced with that, I guess. And that's especially in games, that's a nice safe way to play with that.
Definitely.
um, Especially with the games we talked about like Trophy, where it's explicitly like you're going into a place that doesn't want you here. This
Mm.
your character is doomed, and then so because you don't have to worry about being heroic, you're not playing a game you're going to win necessarily. You
Mm-hmm.
get to there's all this other space you get to explore, the interior of the character, their hopes and dreams, grappling with their failures. What is that character thinking of in the last days
Yeah.
or moments of life? And so with the times we're in, let's say, all the things that every day are so heavily, it's really easy to feel pretty nihilistic and not hopeful.
Yeah.
And I know for some folks, you might not enjoy horror because so many horrible things are happening. But for me, it's sort of a cathartic way of, I guess the most basic way is like, my life's not that bad, but it's also just a way to kind of sit and have that experience of, um, yeah, contemplating your mortality, contemplating things much bigger than you, um, putting things in perspective that way. So there's a lot of those things at play, I guess, that just continue to fascinate me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah. Awesome. No, that was yeah, that was really great. I think it was. I feel like the game Ten Candles taught me
yeah,
that.
yeah.
It taught me that. Like taught me the experience of once you know you're not trying to win this thing, right? Like you're not trying to win. You're not going to beat it, whatever it is. You're not going to win it. That idea of like finding hope in the tragedy or finding hope in the darkness, like, was really eye-opening to me, the way I experience the horror genre in general. And so seeing people play in that space, writing games in that space, that idea, like when I say space, I mean that like idea space. You know, the idea of like, to me, it seems natural now, and I don't know that I even really have the best words for it, but like this idea of like, well, actually, it's super cathartic. Like, I know bad things might be happening in the world, but like, it's actually hopeful to play horror. Like, I don't know, I don't even know how to put better words around than that, but like, well, you are much more articulate about it than I am being, but yeah, something about it is like, it actually feels more right to do it now.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's like getting to sort of use the safe space of a game to kind of explore, you know, hope in the midst of darkness.
And nothing wrong with just like escapism. Like we need to let off steam. We need to like regulate ourselves and find a way to just like exist and find joy. So like nothing wrong with that whatsoever. That's important. I think there's so I'm a big fan of the Magnus Archives, the horror podcast, and I think it was there's an episode they did. It was like a horror panel, and I forget, someone in there said something similar about horror is a hopeful genre, and that really kind of sat with me a little bit. Like, again, at surface level, the protagonist or the point of view you have is like still has some hope that they're going to make it out. Like if there was no hope, it would just be bleak and depressing, but it can still be pretty bleak and intense because you're wanting that character to survive, or you're seeing yourself in that moment of like, I grapple with this too. I'm facing all these things with which it's very hard to see hope. But I don't know, it's moving and cathartic in that way. And there's a lot I'm still interested in exploring that way. And even just, I don't know, aesthetically, like for some reason, when I'm writing stuff, I can't get enough of just brutally tragic ballads. Maybe it's just like a romantic poet kind of thing, but like, that's great. That's for some reason a source of inspiration of, hoping everything will work out, and then it doesn't in this poetic way. That's a big inspiration for Token as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, tell everyone again where they can find you out there if people want to find you, interact with your games, share your running of games with other people who might be interested. Like, you know, where can people find you?
Yeah, mostly on Twitter at Trollhands. Side note there, that's from working as a baker, and my wife took a picture of me moving dough really fast, and my hands blurred and looked all long and gangly. So I thought it looked like I had troll hands.
That's cool. I was wondering where that moniker came from. That's
yeah,
really
nothing to do with being a troll online. I still wonder if I should change it, but it just stuck. But troll hands on Twitter, where I try to just like share other fun things I've seen and talk about game stuff. The group where I run the online games through is called Inside Out Learners. And so those classes are online. If you know any like younger players who want to join, I do a few weekly D&D groups basically.
What age group
is a
younger player for that? Like what ages do you run
usually for? like 9 and up, usually 9 through teenage years through adults.
Cool.
Yeah. And as far as stuff I was vaguely hinting at, I'm not trying to be mysterious, but I am posting a lot about big project which will be revealed. That's trophy related. So yeah, all my stuff's mostly just on Twitter.
Awesome. Yeah, and so folks should again go pre-order the Token book. You can hold it up one more time for us so people can see it again. So they can be encouraged to go pre-order it. And then in the chat, your wife... Oh, there's Candlelight too. Perfect. They look beautiful.
Yeah.
They look really beautiful. Token looks fabulous, by the way. That art is awesome on the front.
Thanks so much. Oh, I should shout out Ezra Rose is the artist. Their work is just incredible. I want to find one illustration in there if I can.
Absolutely.
It's what gives it atmosphere. Just been blown away. Like, hold up right there.
Oh, that's so good. Oh my gosh.
Creature,
That's
yeah, with
so
the
cool.
reflection. Yeah. I
Wow.
believe they are now Shade Garden on Twitter, but
Okay.
Ezra Rose, if you check them out, they're incredible.
That's awesome. And your wife reminded us August 6th, the one page games class at the
Hey,
Muse. So,
yes.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah, if you know other folks who like haven't designed games, that's also gonna be a hybrid class. I'll be doing it in person, but there will be a fancy camera system that
Ooh,
will like actually move and follow our
nice.
table. So it's a 4 week class of basically how to make up your one page game from scratch so you can bring it to the table and get your friends playing.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, thank you again for taking the time to come on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's been a
Uh,
really fun time. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask you to stick around here in my digital
Yep.
green room, but I'm going to take our audience back to being just me to wrap the show up here. So let me just do that real quick. All right. And okay. So huge thanks again. Um, just huge thanks again for Gabriel coming on the show tonight and being my guest. Don't forget to follow Gabriel, like he said, at Glowing Roots. Glowing underscore Roots is the where publishing, but at Troll Hands on Twitter. Don't forget to follow, as we said, and check all those plugs out. And the links for all that stuff will be in the show notes. So if you want to like pre-order a token, you'll be able to just grab that link right there in the show notes after the fact if you're watching this after the fact. Please don't forget to hit follow if you're watching this live on Twitch. You could consider subscribing to the channel, although we just had a lot of subscriptions here tonight, so just want to say thank you again to Signal Station for gifting those subs here on Twitch. We really appreciate it. It's just such a great way to support the show, and it is deeply appreciated. Yeah, if you only got part of tonight's show, you'll be able to watch it on demand here for a little while on Twitch, but you can head to allportsopen.com, watch every episode of the show afterward. You can find Holy Happy Hour Batman on YouTube, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel for that. You can watch these episodes live right now. You might be watching this live right now on YouTube. I don't know. But on YouTube, make sure you hit that little bell so that you get notified when we are going to be going live with a show or have a new episode or whatever. Huge thanks to Joshua Wise, my APON co-founder, for the artwork here on the stream and everything he does for our network. And thanks to Doctor Octoroc for the use of his music on the show, which you heard at the beginning and you'll hear again in just a minute. So I'm that Gamer Priest Ben. Come back next week, same bat time, same bat channel, as we are finally going to be joined by Whitney DeLaglio, the creator of the game Prism and much more. We have rescheduled with Whitney a few different times because of just like different things that have happened for months. I think that it's been like most of this year, 2022, that we've been kind of getting getting Whitney scheduled and rescheduled. So I'm really excited that Whitney is such a great game designer, and I'm really excited to have her on the show next week. So make sure you come back and join us for that next Monday night at 7:30. Don't forget, as I said, we have a special on the All Ports Open Twitch channel tomorrow night at 9 p.m. We have a special actual play of my game Broken. If you like tragic stories, you might like Broken, which is a RPG of tragic romance, and that I wrote, and it's crowdfunding right now. People can check it out, and we're going to be having that actual play stream tomorrow night of it. So, all right, that is the end of our show. Have the holiest and happiest of hours, my friends. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on here. Well, we'll see you on here real soon. Thanks for watching.